So we have some new numbers that came out not too long ago from Iowa. And I don't know, this headline in Mediaite is a little strong. Let's see if we concur with it. Legendary Iowa caucus pollster puts DeSantis in the ballgame despite sizable Trump lead. Quote, closer than it may first seem. So here we have Steve Kornacki, who's the data guy for MSNBC. I think he does a phenomenal job. He's basically like a better version of Nate Silver, I would say. Anyway, so here he is. He's going to break down the numbers and take in the overall picture, but also keep your eye open for some data points that are like a little bit different, right? Because some of them are in here. Let's watch.
A new one with the Des Moines Register. These are the numbers here. This is the bottom line in terms of asking likely caucus goers who they would support right now. Trump is well ahead, more than 2-1, 42%. Ron DeSantis, the only challenger in double digits. He's at 19%. Tim Scott, just under 10%. You see Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Chris Christie. You go all the way down to Will Hurd at 1%. So Trump with that sizable lead here in Iowa.
So 23-point lead. Look, that is pretty beefy. That's up there. I will say I'm shocked by Tim Scott at 9% in Iowa. That's shocking. Nikki Haley at 6%. I wonder if they're spending huge there on ads. That would be my guess looking at that.
Inside the numbers a little bit, evangelical voters in particular. In 2016, remember, Donald Trump did not win evangelical voters in the Iowa team. But among evangelicals now in this poll, Trump is at 47%, nearly 50% of evangelicals backing Donald Trump.
See, now that's amazing. Evangelical voters are supposed to be, mostly focused on abortion and social issues and go for the most like Christian-y candidate. In this election cycle, that would clearly be Mike Pence. But they're 47% with Trump, 20% with DeSantis. Pence is all the way down there at 6%. So this shows perfectly that story we discussed the other day, where there's an evangelical Christian pastor who literally was like, hey man, they like Trump more than they like Jesus. Like, I quote Jesus, and they come up to me after and say, what's this weak BS that you're preaching? That doesn't work anymore. Well, these numbers bear it out. So look, if they're going to try to make the case that DeSantis still has a prayer in Iowa, I'm waiting for it, because so far everything I'm seeing is making the opposite case.
2/3, roughly, of all Iowa caucus goers in 2016 identified as evangelicals. This is a huge voting bloc in the Iowa caucuses. Wow. There's Trump at 47%. And by the way, there's Mike Pence, who has built his political career in large part on ties to evangelical Christians. He's at 6% with evangelicals, and his unfavorable rating, 51% with evangelical voters in Iowa. That's Pence, who obviously has taken his share of heat from Donald Trump over his actions on January 6th. Asking Iowa Republicans here, has Trump committed serious crimes? Only 26% believe so.
Only 26% of Iowa Republican voters say Trump has committed serious crimes. 65% say he hasn't. Wow.
2/3 say he's not committed serious crimes. Very interesting tidbit. This poll was conducted sort of between the news coming out of Georgia last week of the latest Trump indictment. The portion of the poll that was conducted before that news broke had Donald Trump leading in Iowa over Ron DeSantis by 18 points. The portion of the poll that was conducted after the news of the latest indictment broke had Donald Trump's lead swelling to 25 points.
Oh, there you go. Look, this is proof of concept of what we've been talking about for a while now. Anytime there's a new indictment or a bunch more criminal charges, he goes up among the Republican base. And he went from plus 18 to plus 25 in Iowa in particular. That's so amazing, man. Because if you think about it in the other direction, if it was a Democrat, I have no doubt the numbers will go in the opposite direction, because Democratic primary voters have convinced themselves that electability is the most important thing. Like, oh, we need somebody who can beat the Republican. And, that's just not nearly as much of a concern for the Republicans. They don't think, first and foremost, who could beat a Democrat. That's not what they do.
Again, you do see that rally around Trump effect that seems to take hold with each one of these indictments. You saw that in this poll. Also, historically here, Trump leading by 23 points. The Des Moines Register poll is one that has a rich history going all the way back to the 1980s. These are Republicans at this point. These are Republican races at this point in the cycle. Who's had a lead comparable to Donald Trump's 23 points? Well, George W. Bush back in the 2000 cycle, he led by 27.
So Dole was leading by 3 in 1988. He ended up winning by 13. He led by 46. See, that's the big one. He was leading by 46 in 1996, and then he only ended up winning by 3 points. So in the polls, it was donezo, but then he almost lost the caucus. Then you have Bush was plus 27, ended up winning by 11. Romney was plus 12. He ended up losing by 9. So Romney had a big lead. He ended up losing by 9. Romney was plus 1. He ended up barely losing in 2012. Trump was plus 5 in 2016. He ended up losing by 3 to Ted Cruz in 2016. And right now in Iowa, Trump is plus 23. And then obviously we don't know what's going to happen yet. But anyway, the point is, in some instances, there were gigantic swings in Iowa. Now, look, just to be clear, I don't want to overstate this. Iowa's kind of unique, right? They are kind of unique. So they never pick the person who actually ends up going on to win the primary in modern history. So in other words, I believed one time they picked Mike Huckabee. He didn't end up winning the nomination. It was John McCain. Then they picked Rick Santorum the next election. He didn't end up winning. It was Mitt Romney. Then they picked Ted Cruz in 2016. He didn't end up winning. It was Donald Trump. So they have a track record of not picking the winner. So anyway, it's a weird state, and these numbers are really, really interesting. It's not like they're kind of all over the place.
He ended up winning by 11. Bob Dole, they called him the president of Iowa for a while. In 96, he was up 46 points at this point. He won in 96, but only by 3 points in the caucuses. So there's an example where a big lead shrank dramatically. And then you do have some examples here of candidates who led at this point and ended up losing. Their leads weren't as big as Trump is right now. But if somebody is going to make a move and catch Trump in Iowa, who might that be? One way of looking at it is this. Ask about the favorable, unfavorable ratings of these different candidates. And I think a couple things are notable. DeSantis may be 23 points behind Trump, but DeSantis actually has the best margin here on favorable, unfavorable. Look at 66% of Republicans in Iowa have a favorable view of DeSantis, 29 unfavorable.
That's shocking. So DeSantis has a higher favorability rating in Iowa than Trump does among the Republican base. And remember, this is with Trump doing an onslaught of attacks against DeSantis, too. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, man. These numbers are really wild.
It's very strong. It's stronger than it was for Trump in 16, but DeSantis is a touch higher. Tim Scott, extremely popular, too. Nikki Haley, popular as well. Notably, Chris Christie, who's gone the hardest after Donald Trump, extremely negative. Mike Pence, 42-53 negative.
See, now that's interesting. Christie's massively underwater with his favorability rating in Iowa, but he's also in second place in New Hampshire, and that goes to show you the difference state by state. You know, Northeastern Republicans want to get past Trump. Iowa Republicans don't really want to get past Trump. This is really fascinating stuff.
Now, if you're looking at somebody who might be able to make a run at Trump in Iowa, maybe, it's most likely a DeSantis. It could be Scott, maybe a Nikki Haley. When we ask voters, in fact, who their second choice is, it's spread out. DeSantis gets the highest second choice total, but Tim Scott's right there with 15% as well. Vivek Ramaswamy, by the way, at 12%. So the problem for DeSantis, not only is he 23 points behind, he's very well liked still by Republicans in Iowa. But right now, it's not as if he is the default second choice of all of those voters in Iowa. And one other interesting number I think we can show you here. We just asked voters in Iowa, what's most important to you? Going with a candidate who's closest to your views or electability, a candidate who can beat Biden. And you see about 2/3 said closest to their views on the issues.
Look, on that one, I'm jealous of Republicans, man. 65% are like, I'm going to vote for the candidate who is closest to me on the issues. They're not, they don't buy into the media narratives of electability. Now, in this case, I think it actually happens to be true that any other Republican is more electable in a general election than Trump. But they're like, I don't care. I have a principled belief in X, Y, or Z, and so I'm just going to vote for Trump. So I wish the Democratic base was more like that, because if they were, Bernie would have won in a landslide. Because on the issues, Democratic voters agree way more with Bernie. They only picked Biden because of the quote-unquote electability thing. And, of course, the day that all the centrists dropped out and endorsed Biden and consolidated the vote. We don't need to get into it. We don't need to revive our PTSD.
Split here. The ones saying closest to their views on the issues, Trump with a massive lead there of 30 points. Those looking at electability, Trump leads, but DeSantis is within 10. Scott's in double digits. So the more
So they still think by a 10-point margin that Trump is more electable than DeSantis. That is hilarious. Oh my God, that is so so brain dead. These people are so brainwashed, man.
Republican voters focus on that question of electability. That's where Trump starts to get into a closer contest here with his opponent. So, yes, overall, a very big lead for Donald Trump in Iowa, one that historically has portended good things for candidates in that position. But you do see rivals here in Iowa, notably DeSantis, notably Scott, to some degree Haley, who are still very well known and very well liked by Republicans. And we have more than half Republicans in this poll saying their minds not made up.
Oh, that's interesting. That last fact is interesting. More than half of Republicans in this poll said their mind is not made up. That might be the biggest fact that cuts against Trump. But look, I'll be honest with you. I think this headline's a little overstated. It's really not close. It's really not close. Trump has a huge lead. I think it's fair to say it ain't over. It's definitely not over. But this is mostly amazing news for Trump, and we're basically looking like we're looking for a needle in a haystack for positive data points for everybody else. So I don't know. I'll leave it to you guys. Do you think they're making a mountain out of a molehill with this headline here, or do you think it's fair? I think it's pretty overstated. Again, I wouldn't say it's over. I wouldn't pound that gavel yet, but the big wet boy is in a very comfortable position, to say the least. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.